Here are the voices of the faithful men and women who use their skills, their ministries, and their gifts to help people hear the Lord's words and walk in His ways. Here are the gatekeepers.
There are broadcasters around the world proclaiming Jesus, and I have the privilege of introducing you to one, a longtime friend, Brian Fisher, who is out in Minnesota and represents a ministry and broadcast station called CCM Rewound. Hey, Brian.
Hey, George. Pleasure to be with you. It's been, let's just put it this way. I think it was the David and Goliath show days the last time we did an interview, so it's been quite a while.
And what a lot of fun. David and Goliath show was a freeform radio show back on WFMU Freeform Radio out of New York City, New Jersey area. And while the station still continues, we did a Christian rock and roll show, right, Brian, for about 18 and a half years there.
That was quite a run.
That's right. And Brian was a volunteer there and learned to love Christian music to the point where he became a great broadcaster in his own right. Brian, tell us real super quick, when did you become a Christian real quick? And tell us a little bit about the stations you've been with before we talk about CCM Rewound.
Okay, great. I became a Christian in the mid-'70s. I was in high school at the time. I'd been invited to go to a youth group retreat. Even though I'd gone to church pretty much all my life, the gospel was presented to me in a way that I could really grasp. And so I committed my life to Christ on that retreat. And I really began to grow after high school. I wound up working for national religious broadcasters that had their headquarters in New Jersey at the time. And I got my first taste of it. It was a job that lasted about a year, but it planted a seed. I kind of bounced around here and there for a few years, and then, in 1980, I had an experience. It was actually a family tragedy that caused me to re-examine my life and to refocus my life. And I thought, okay, I love broadcasting. I love presenting music. Now is the time to pursue it. So I went to broadcasting school, graduated, and a few months after graduation, I had my first paid broadcasting job at WLIX in Long Island. That lasted a few years. I eventually moved back to New Jersey, started working in radio there. A couple of stations, WAWZ, which is now Star 99.1, I believe, and of course 970 DJ, WWDJ. To fast forward a little bit more, I moved with my wife, Sharon, to Minnesota in the early 90s, and I continued to have a very fulfilling career working at a contemporary Christian station here in the Twin Cities. And that lasted till, the early 2000s. I went into mainstream radio for about 10 years after that before circumstances led me to bring CCM Rewound to fruition.
Well, okay, there you go. But let's then talk about contemporary Christian music. It's a phenomenon. It's unique. It's its own genre. And you fell in love with it, just as I did in early broadcasting years. Contemporary Christian music. Tell the uninitiated what that looked like back in the days when we were younger believers.
Well, I remember it being called Jesus music before the term contemporary Christian music was coined by, I have no idea who. But the early music was, for lack of a better way to describe it, it was music created by Christians expressing their faith in many different ways, whether it is praise, whether it's worship, describing a life experience. And it was done in the musical language that was relevant for the time, whether it was 1970s or 1980s and so on. People, I should say, our contemporaries were used to the church music at the time, which was hymns, and they're okay. But because everybody was listening to pop music on the radio, it just really wasn't relevant. And a lot of people dismissed the idea of the entertainment value of that. And there's something wrong with the entertainment value as long as the spiritual value is intact. And for the most part, the early music was very much like that.
So, you know what, as a young Christian, who were some of the Christian artists that you really took to when you first heard Jesus music?
Well, the very first contemporary Christian concert I attended was Andre Crouch and the Disciples. That was just a few months after I got saved.
Wow.
In later years, Phil Keaggy, he came to our church in Chatham, New Jersey a couple of times. Phil was very instrumental in my faith. Not only was and is a world-class musician, but someone who loves the Lord and has been consistent all these years.
Yes, he has.
Other musicians and artists that really did play and still continue to play a part of my faith would be Pat Terry Group, Dallas Holm, Twyla Paris, Steve Green, and, taking you into the decade of the 90s, Brian Duncan, Two or More, which was kind of like a one-hit wonder, but they had a song that maybe you've heard it, maybe even played on the gate. It's called Heaven is Calling Your Name.
Wow.
It was an appeal by the guys to a relative to come to know Jesus.
Yeah.
We love you. Jesus loves you too. And that is one of the songs that happens to be in rotation on CCM Rewound, and one of those that still today plays a very special part in my faith.
Hey, we're talking with Brian Fisher, who is the director and station manager of CCM Rewound, which is a station that you can access wherever you might be listening from or on the planet, no joke, via the internet. And you can find out more about the ministry itself, ccmrewound.com. Hey, Brian, so what is the result you've seen? You know, people listen to music and it's entry level into their heart and their soul and their mind sometimes. Music just gets a powerful message across. What powerful messages have you seen contemporary Christian music, Jesus music, say and play? What songs have you found a great reaction to in your years of broadcasting?
Well, in addition to the one I mentioned just a moment ago, there are songs that still, I guess, to coin the phrase, I guess good phrase, sends chills up your spine.
Yeah.
Rise Again by Dallas Holm.
Wow, yes.
That is one song you can never tire of. Another one I think right off the top of my head is one of my personal favorites. It's called Dive by Stephen Curtis Chapman. That's one of the more recent songs.
Oh, I love that song. That's a song of commitment, and I remember playing that over at Star 99.1, and that was a song about taking a step of faith. And being a scuba diver, Brian, you know, you usually do that off the back of a boat.
Yeah.
You take a big, giant step with your scuba gear on off the back of the boat. It's a step of faith diving right in, and I resonated with that song, so I get you. I had a big favorite by Michael Omardian. I thought he wrote some great things, a keyboard artist and a great arranger, worked with a lot of great musicians. And of course, we all have to give homage to our deceased but ever-living brother, Keith Green, who wrote some powerful songs of conviction and encouragement. Can you name some others as well, brother?
Well, sure. Since you mentioned Keith Green, we can't forget beyond radio, the outreach of Christian concerts. You and I are among the privileged few still around who got to see and hear Keith Green in concert and be challenged by the message that he presented, which is very hard, even for the time. The thing I regret, beyond the fact that Keith was taken away from us early, was that there are very few artists who have the zeal and passion today that Keith Green had.
That's true. It's hard. There are other artists who are doing, say, intense praise and worship music, which is a sort of another spin-off of CCM, if you will, who have that compassion. And you know what? But there are some great writers still out there. Now, I want to also give a shout-out to artists like Twyla Paris, Nancy Honeytree, Janny Grind. I mean, these were women who wrote some great lyrics that spoke to our hearts, even as Keith's music did. My brother, tell us a little bit about CCM Rewound. How do you guys stay alive? How do we access the station? What can we expect to hear? And then when you're done explaining that, I'm going to ask if you would maybe share some prayer requests with us.
Okay, very good. Well, CCM Rewound is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week Christian station playing what we now refer to as classic CCM. We play music from the 70s to the early 2000s with our biggest emphasis on the decades of the 80s and the 90s. We are an all-music station with the exception of some features. We air the power verse of the day near the top of the hour, every hour. During the weekday, we take about 5 minutes each end of the day to present A Word With You with Ron Hutchcraft. Of course, many listeners in the New York area are familiar with Ron from his years on WWDJ as well as his ministry work. But we allow that 5 minutes to be able to allow people to refocus away from the music. The weekends, we have a couple of specialty programs. We do have live shows in which I am the host of one of those, rotating with other classic DJs. Also, Jerry Bryant hosts of Full Circle. He has a program that focuses focuses specifically on the Jesus music of the 70s and 80s. So you're going to hear music. You're not going to hear commercials, but it is music presented in an exciting manner, one that you will enjoy listening to. If you listen to Christian music radio in whatever city you may be in back in the day, this is going to remind you of what you heard when you first heard these songs on the radio.
Wow. Great. CCM Rewound. And to find out more about the ministry, or maybe see a couple of pictures and album covers and such, why, I presume we can go to ccmrewound.com?
That is correct. That is our website. You can also access our streaming there. We have a couple of different options for listening to the streaming audio, depending on how good your internet connection is. We're also on social media in a limited way, too. We're on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. And you can also contact us by way of email if you'd like to sit down and write and you have questions. Our email address is info, at ccmrewound.com.
Awesome. Brian Fisher, our special guest, and kind listener, when you hear of these stations that are playing music, you know, the laborer is worthy of his hire. So these artists deserve to see some compensation for their hard work and in their investment in presenting their craft and music, for all of us. And so we, all of us, our broadcasters, are responsible to do royalty kind of payment things. You know, we have licensing, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, ProCam, and it's the same thing with ccmrewound.com, with CCM Rewound as it is here with the Gay Radio. We have to pay these royalties, and deservedly so. So that means income. That means we got to get the money to do so. So I'm putting in a plug for Brian that if you would check out ccmrewound.com, the webpage. I'm sure there's a way there for you to send in a gift or underwrite this ministry to help meet some of those expenses. I hope I didn't tread on hollow ground there, Brian, by sharing that.
No, not at all, George. In fact, on our main page, there is a donate button on the upper right-hand corner. That'll take you to a separate page that will it'll tell you about the needs and our desires.
Awesome.
We don't focus so much on the operating expenses because that's a given, but we try to focus, we try to accentuate the positive.
Yep.
But on that page, we do give options for people to be able to help underwrite the operating expenses of CCM Rewound.
Brian, I got to ask you, before we sign off in 30 seconds, share with us a prayer request. Maybe you and Sharon have something we listeners here at the Gate can pray about for you?
Right. First of all, two prayer requests. Pray that all of us, Gate, CCM Rewound, or whoever, we have the continued freedom to promote the gospel truth through music.
Yes.
And on a more personal level, as we near retirement age, that doors and opportunities for CCM Rewound or CCMR Media, our parent company, to flourish to the point that we can make a fair go of it.
We will be praying for those things. My special guest and longtime friend, Brian Fisher of CCM Rewound. Find out more, ccmrewound.com. Brian, God bless you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you, George.
This is Gatekeepers.
Thank you for listening to Gatekeepers. Please keep our guests in prayer. For more information about our guests and their ministries, email us, thegateradio@ihopeg.org, or call us at 844-GATE-247. That's 844-428-3247.